Tonight, a heartbroken father jailed in a shock twist on a toddler tragedy. Victoria rallies to help in the race to save a sick baby fighting for life in Bali. A new threat in the earthquake disaster zone as the death toll passes 21,000. 60,000 cars stranded off Victoria's coast, leaving buyers in limbo because of a tiny bug. A Kanye West backed down in a legal bun fight with a Melbourne burger store. And the young Victorian giving Australia hope in a hot battle against India.
Live from Melbourne, 7 News with Peter Mitchell starts now.
Good evening. A grieving father is behind bars tonight in a shock twist over the death of his toddler. The heartbroken dad was originally spared prison time, but has now been ordered to serve 6 months over a joyride that went tragically wrong.
He bears a guilt that would haunt any father for life. Today, 3 Supreme Court appeal judges decided it wasn't enough, resentencing Christopher Brown to jail over a buggy joyride that went horribly wrong. His pregnant wife now left to raise their children alone for at least 6 months.
Tragic event, and we feel for the family. I think he's probably had enough of a punishment, to be honest.
2-year-old Lincoln was killed on Christmas Day 2020, crushed by an ATV buggy while his father did burnouts at their family farm at Barnawatha. He reached speeds of up to 50 kilometres an hour while his toddler sat on his knee, unrestrained and without a helmet. Last August, the county court ruled,
"The suffering and loss you have brought upon yourself involves a punishment more than any court could impose."
Today, the Supreme Court disagreed, ruling that the respondent's offending was objectively serious and his moral culpability was high. He deliberately did not heed the warnings, disregarded the safety measures and embarked on inherently dangerous conduct. Brown was sentenced to 15 months jail with an on-parole period of 6 months after admitting to dangerous driving causing death. The DPP successfully argued the father must serve time due to its similarities to another case. Since August, Brown has already completed more than half of his court-ordered community work. If it weren't for that and his early guilty plea, he may have spent another 2 years behind bars.
No one wants these things to happen, especially today in kids. Never going to have a good Christmas again, I wouldn't imagine.
Rochelle Brown, 7 News.
Victorians have rallied to help save a 7-week-old baby who's gravely ill in Bali. They've donated thousands of dollars to get the little girl home on a Medivac flight, but there is a major hitch.
Just 7 weeks old and fighting for life in a Bali hospital, Australians have heard her mother's cry for help.
I wish that I could just teleport her home to Australia and that she could just be in the best hospital and just that they had all the medicine that she needs.
Donations to a GoFundMe page for baby Lucky Ahimsa grew from $30,000 last night to more than $165,000 this evening. That should be enough to get Lucky home. But right now she's too sick to be transported. The infant may have to wait 7 to 10 days.
It's too dangerous to fly an infant who's in such a critical condition at this stage.
With a severe bacterial infection in her lungs, she's relying on a ventilator to breathe.
On the way to emergency, she started to go really cold. And she closed her eyes and I thought that I lost her in that moment.
A medical rescue team is waiting for the green light on the Gold Coast. They've offered to fly the newborn to Brisbane, where she can receive specialist treatment.
We could look to be wheels up within 6 to 8 hours. Essentially, it's a mobile ICU, paediatric ICU.
Even with a generous discount, the air ambulance operation is more than $107,000, and each day in intensive care at the Denpasar Hospital is costing the family another $8,000. They have the support. All Lucky needs now is to hold on. Jade Vincent, 7 News.
Frantic rescue efforts continue in the twin earthquake disaster zone, dragging some survivors from the rubble against all the odds. But there's no let-up to the heartache, with the death toll now passing 21,000 and a new threat emerging.
The 5-figure death toll is heart-wrenching. The reality of what it looks like, even more so. Row after row of freshly dug graves. And soon, there'll be thousands more. Here, they bury unidentified victims. First, police take photos and DNA in the hope that eventually families will know the fate of their loved ones. We had the chance to save more people, he says, but the state's response was too slow. It's impossible to know how many more are buried beneath the rubble. They can't treat patients at the hospital. There's no electricity. So it's now a morgue, as survivors do what little living they can. At least we have each other, says Suat, because we don't have a home. Very few here do. Desperate for food, water and warmth. With fears a secondary disaster, disease could claim more lives. 13 million people are affected over an area half the size of Victoria. There is so much going on what feels like every street corner in this one town. This is yet another completely flattened apartment block where the rescue operation is ongoing. Then over here you have dozens of people who have lost their homes. They're camped out making do with whatever they can find, really. Over here, a partially collapsed 6-storey hotel. The rooms exposed there. You can see the couches still sitting in place, the painting on the wall. And as for this localised flooding, well, that's a result of the sea level rising 4 days ago when the earthquake hit.
Every time I get down from there to our place there, to our tent, I get many questions. Did you find my daughter? Did you find my son? I just need to keep going.
They all do. As impossible as that seems. We beg God for help, says this little boy, somehow managing a smile. Virtually barefoot in the snow, we beg God to save us. At times, it seems those prayers are being answered, but far less frequently now. 4 days after millions of people went to sleep, expecting to go to work or school the next morning, now this is all they see and hear.
And Sarah Greenhalgh is on the ground in Turkey. Sarah, in just the past few hours, we've seen exactly why rescuers are not giving up.
Peter, absolutely incredible scenes close to the epicentre of Monday's quake. In the 96th hour of this search, a woman, a mother, not only found alive beneath the rubble, but walking out, holding on to her baby daughter who was also alive. Then in the 100th hour, another rescue, another woman. She has spent 4 freezing nights under the concrete with temperatures in that area dipping to below -10, but she too alive. These are the rare moments that are keeping people in these 2 countries going at the moment, as field hospitals are constructed to treat the critically wounded, and these giant tent cities are popping up everywhere so that the hundreds of thousands of homeless at least have somewhere to sleep. Peter?
Incredible pictures indeed. Sarah Greenhalgh in Turkey, thank you. 2,000 members of Melbourne's Muslim community held special Friday prayers for the victims of the earthquakes. Many of them had been personally touched by the disaster.
In total now we've buried 16 of our family members. My emotions, I've had to shut them down. If I don't shut down my emotions, I'm going to crumble.
For me, my people are my family. They're all my family.
72 doctors, paramedics, firefighters and engineers flew out of Sydney bound for Turkey today. Once there, the rescue specialists will rotate shifts to work 24 hours a day for the next 2 weeks. A young killer will serve just 2 years behind bars for fatally stabbing a 15-year-old child at Deer Park. The schoolboy was ambushed by a gang of 10 youths and left for dead.
Solomon Tofelanaki's parents were only given 15 years with their son and now face a lifetime of grief. Today, a judge ruled the young man responsible for the schoolboy's death should serve 2 years behind bars. The teen was ambushed by a gang of 10 youths at the Brimbank shopping centre in 2020. He lay in the fetal position as the boys kicked and beat him before the killer, who can't be named for legal reasons, plunged a knife into Solomon's chest. A court hearing, he later told friends, "I poked him, bro," and "I did it for the gang." 15-year-old Solomon will never get to realise his dreams of becoming a police officer and a rugby player, but his killer will. The court hearing, he wants to become an electrician upon his release. With time already served, the young man will walk free from detention next year. Estelle Greeping, 7 News.
Fire crews are at the scene of a scrub fire at Sunbury. These pictures are just in. 9 CFA units are still on Rays Road. The alert was raised just before 5 o'clock, with the flames taking hold and destroying 5 acres close to a home. The fire has now been brought under control. Shocking new data has revealed the state's health crisis is worsening, leaving thousands of sick Victorians waiting in pain. The problem is most acute in emergency rooms, where a growing number of patients are left for hours without being seen.
In agonising pain and made to wait for 11 hours.
Towards the end, I started almost feeling a little bit, a bit paranoid, thinking that really nobody cares and I don't feel safe here.
Patricia Boncristiani was suffering with kidney stones.
I was a 77-year-old woman with undiagnosed severe abdominal pain, and nobody seemed to think I was any kind of priority.
The grandmother isn't alone. The state's latest health performance data shows 34% of Victorians weren't treated in the recommended time, and 48% of patients spent more than 4 hours waiting for emergency care.
We keep smashing records, and these are not records that we want to smash, by the way. 500,000 people presented to Victoria's emergency departments in the last quarter.
Almost 60% of adult mental health patients waited more than 8 hours in emergency before getting a bed.
For the government to blame previous governments and other factors is just not taking leadership and being responsible for what they are required to do.
On top of hospital failures, Ambulance Victoria experienced its busiest quarter in history. Paramedics received more than 100,000 Code 1 call-outs in a 3-month period.
Getting our health system back to the best it can be is we have a laser-like focus on that.
Chanel Vella, 7 News.
Australia's Defence Department has ripped out a number of Chinese-made security cameras from key government buildings over fears sensitive information could be fed back to Beijing. They're the first of nearly 1,000 cameras to go across government buildings.
This is a significant issue and it's one that we clearly need to deal with.
Beijing has slammed the move as an overreach, accusing the federal government of abusing state powers. 60,000 new cars are stranded off Victoria's coast, stuck on ships thanks to a small bug. It's creating a nightmare for the motor industry and huge delays on the docks because quarantine officers are battling to keep up with the demand from surging car sales.
Sitting on the dock of the bay, thousands of cars await their next move at Port of Melbourne, but that's being pushed back, in some cases weeks, by quarantine delays across the country. Australia's growing appetite for new cars colliding with agriculture concern.
Customers are going to have to wait another 6 to 8 weeks reportedly, and that's on top of delays that are already existing, up to 18 months for some new vehicles.
Quarantine officers are on high alert for this, the marmorated stink bug that damages vegetable crops, fruit and ornamental trees.
It is a seasonal pest, with the risk of BMSB hitchhiking to Australia increasing between September to April each year.
Car carriers are usually in port for a day or two, but one car dealer told 7 News the Dover Highway was stuck at port 8 days. 500 Isuzus on board, waiting for biosecurity clearance.
New car sales in January were up almost 12% on last year. That's thousands more cars that need to be checked for pests or weeds that represent a risk to Australia.
For Toyota in recent weeks, there's been an increase in processing times at Australian ports, but no Toyota cars have been found to have biosecurity risks.
It's quite incredible. Who would have thought one little bug would be enough to really throw the industry off course?
Drive estimates 60,000 new cars are stuck, either at sea or ports. 13 vehicle carriers were waiting outside Port Phillip Heads today. Congestion on the sea creates delays getting on the road. Blake Johnson, 7 News.
The Reserve Bank has signalled at least 2 more interest rate hikes are on the way. Tonight, the federal government is under growing pressure to provide more cost of living relief as many Australians face a mortgage nightmare.
Inflation continues to wreak havoc on the economy, putting the focus squarely on Jim Chalmers' budget.
The Independent Reserve Bank has confirmed today that our energy plan will take some of the sting out of this inflation.
The Reserve Bank's latest statement says the government's $1.5 billion power bill relief will reduce inflation, but the delay in delivering it has sparked a new fight.
Jim Chalmers wants people to wait for his May budget just so he's got a PR stunt.
The federal payments were to begin next month, but have now been delayed, rebadged as the budget's cost of living centrepiece.
It is unacceptable.
Mr Keane says the states have kept their promises, imposing caps on coal prices, and Mr Chalmers now has to keep his.
A deal's a deal.
This is Matt Keane playing politics in the lead up to a state election.
New South Wales goes to the polls next month. Mr Chalmers noting Mr Keane's not promising state energy relief until July.
He's looking for headlines here and I'm looking for outcomes.
The Reserve Bank statement produces some new predictions on the economy, most of them bad.
Inflation is going to be stronger for longer.
The RBA revising average inflation this year up from 3% to 4.75%. Unemployment higher, up from 3.75% to 4.5%. Economic growth lower from 3.75% to 1.5% this year. And wages growth higher from 4% to 4.25%. The Reserve Bank confirming more rate rises are coming.
It may be that we're not going to see the cumulative effect of all these interest rate rises being fully felt in the economy for some time.
The real pain about to begin. Mark Riley, 7 News.
A legal showdown between international music star Kanye West and a small Melbourne burger restaurant has gone cold. The rapper launched court action, but now his lawyers are trying to drop the case.
A legal bun fight almost squashed.
I wasn't surprised. It's just something that I just want to end.
Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, filed a lawsuit against Mark Alkuri's Kanye West-inspired burger restaurant for misleading and deceptive conduct. But 4 months on, his lawyers told the federal court they'll cease acting for him because he stopped contacting them.
I feel like it could have been dealt with a lot differently.
The store's Kanye mural has already been removed, along with the logo and burgers named in the rapper's honour. But the beef remains with the business name College Dropout Burgers, a twist on the name of Kanye West's 2004 debut album. Mr Alkuri says he wishes it hadn't have come to this, but he won't be bullied into a name change and has the Ivanhoe community standing behind him. It's not clear how the global superstar heard about the burger bar, but his wife is from Ivanhoe. He's yet to be seen here visiting the in-laws or the courtroom. Another hearing is booked for March 3rd, which could put an end to this David versus Goliath battle.
I pretty much just want this matter to be dealt with and done with so that I can keep serving, Melbourne's quality burgers.
Putting the legal pickle behind him and in the burgers where they belong. Sarah Jones, 7 News.
A Victorian debutante is single-handedly keeping Australia in the first test against India. Tim Watson, Todd Murphy is having some first game.
He is, Mitch. The Aussie top order crumbled and there's a fresh injury concern, but the Victorian...
Wicket.
for Todd Murphy.
Also, Trent Cotchin reveals Richmond's surprising motivating factor for 2023 and the latest on his move up forward. And a former Tiger who trained with Carlton yesterday has been signed by your Magpies today. More on that shortly.
It's a funny game, isn't it?
It is.
You, Tim. A football legend is facing new allegations as a second accuser comes forward. The details are next on 7 News. Also coming up, music stars say goodbye to one of the world's greatest songwriters. A Crown valet driver's expensive prang, 2 Lamborghinis owned by the same billionaire. Later, the Melbourne suburb fetching $14,000 a square metre.
And I'll have a high fashion twist on weather live from Government House.
Our foggy start to the day caused flight disruptions at Melbourne Airport this morning. 2 Air New Zealand flights were forced to divert to Sydney and 10 domestic services had to turn back or divert. A second woman has given evidence against Barry Cable, claiming she too was sexually assaulted by the football great. Today, the woman addressed the court via video link from the US, where she now lives.
From the charismatic, generous and kind Barry Cable she knew to a whole different person. That's how the second woman accusing the football legend of sexual assaults described his demeanour changing in the course of his alleged attacks. We can't tell you her name or who she is, but we can tell you her story. Testifying on video link from the United States, the woman recalled Barry Cable inviting her into the shower naked and asking her to touch his genitals when she was just 8 years old. The next time she was 14. The witness said Barry Cable gave her a massage, took off her bathing suit and rubbed her breasts, only stopping when a family member oversaw it. At 15 years old, she said the footballer tried to bribe her, offering her money, then saying, "If you let me finish what I started last year, you don't have to pay the money back." The woman's family was close with Barry Cable's. Instead of protecting her, she says her relatives shielded her abuser. Through tears, she said if he wasn't famous, the outcome would have been much different. Barry Cable denies all allegations of child sexual abuse. Cassidy Moscone, 7 News.
52 Victorians have died with COVID in the past week, even though reported case numbers dropped slightly on last week to 2,900. The number of patients in hospital remains stable at 118. Frontline doctors say many of those being treated in hospital are vaccinated older Victorians who have fallen behind with their boosters. Legendary singer and composer Burt Bacharach has died at the age of 94. The Oscar-winning songwriter's career spanned 60 years to become a hit-making machine.
Burt Bacharach left a legacy humming in countless hearts.
Why do birds suddenly appear?
A 6-decade soundtrack to our lives. A catalogue of over 500 songs, a hit-making machine.
What's new, pussycat? Whoa, whoa, whoa.
It started in the 50s after meeting lyricist Hal David. Hal provided the words to make Burt's melodies soar.
Walk on by.
But it was their 1961 union with gifted gospel singer Dionne Warwick that would hurtle the trio to the top.
The moment I wake up.
He set industry records and creative benchmarks, won 6 Grammys, 3 Oscars, and in the 90s, his career repowered by a new generation.
Gentlemen, Mr. Burt Bacharach.
What the world needs now is love, sweet love.
I have to be very grateful for the gift that's been given me.
We all know his name, we all know his music, and to my mind that puts him up there with Mozart and Beethoven.
Rolling Stone magazine, less generous, 32nd all-time greatest. Die-hard romantics may disagree. A piano man who held the keys to so many hearts. Chris Reason, 7 News.
Valet Burt Bacharach. Now to a car park prang of epic proportions. A Crown valet driver was behind the wheel when he crashed one Lamborghini into another one outside the Perth resort. The driver was understandably in disbelief as he surveyed the damage.
Can't park there, bro.
The luxury supercars, worth over $1 million, they are both owned by Perth billionaire Lawrence Escalante. He says accidents happen and he's working with Crown to fix the cars. Doctors are worried about a new online medical trend. Next, they're describing it as Uber for drugs, and they warn it could turn deadly. Also coming up, the McDonald's rampage that has to be seen to be believed. And a Hollywood hard man's warning to a Melbourne paparazzo. A 35-year-old Geelong man who fatally shot a young woman and burned her body in a tent has been jailed for 27 years. Nicholas Cross was found guilty of murdering Madison Parrott while glamping at the Geelong Showgrounds in 2018. In the days following the murder, he tried to flee to Queensland but was caught in Sydney. The judge called the act an utterly senseless killing, unprovoked and cold-blooded. Doctors have issued a warning over a new trend described as Uber for prescription drugs. A rising number of Australians are bypassing their GP and using online companies to get prescriptions with potentially fatal results.
It's been likened to Uber for prescription drugs, but doctors warn it's dangerous.
And I don't want it to be patient harms or patient death that makes all of us look at this and say this is not appropriate.
A rising number of Australians are using online companies to get prescriptions for all sorts of medications without using telehealth or any consultations with a doctor.
What occurs is a person puts some details and an electronic signature into a portal, and then moments later a script is generated electronically.
Providing instant access to medications including medicinal cannabis, sedatives and antidepressants.
Prescribing is not just a tick and flick exercise. There's a conversation with the doctor that needs to happen.
Without it, the risks far outweigh the convenience.
Some of the most concerning medications are being accessed, like drugs of dependence.
If somebody is prescribed a drug that interacts badly with something else that they're taking, that can sometimes be life-threatening.
Industry regulator APRA is now investigating how these companies are operating. A crackdown and new rules are likely within the next few months.
Prescriptions will still be available on telehealth, but it will need to be a prescription that's provided in the context of an interaction with the doctor.
Christy Mayer, 7 News.
A heated argument has turned into a desperate fight for life in a violent rampage at a McDonald's restaurant. A jealous and drug-affected boyfriend rammed his car into the store where his terrified partner had fled to escape him.
Running for her life, a woman flees through the car park just after midnight after her partner pulled a knife, threatening to kill her, accusing her of cheating on him. He drives out of the car park and for a brief moment she suspects this crazed argument might be over. Then the SUV mounts the footpath and rockets towards her across the car park, stopping only after smashing two bollards. Behind the wheel, 28-year-old Abbas Al-Kafaji. The diagnosed schizophrenic is off his medication and high on marijuana. So enraged at first, he forgets to grab his weapon, the knife he's brought with him on the passenger seat. She makes a dash into the restaurant and begs them to lock the doors, but it's too late. She takes hold of whatever she can find, a single broomstick, her only physical defence as she tries to talk her partner down. That's the knife in his right hand as he closes in. Months later, while held on remand, despite an AVO preventing him contacting his ex, Al-Kafaji rings. She says, "You shouldn't be talking to me. You tried to kill me." He says, "Weren't you happy I did that because it shows I'm serious about you?" Al-Kafaji has pleaded guilty to a string of offences. The most serious carries a maximum of 12 years jail. He will be sentenced in May. Evan Batten, 7 News.
Back home now, Hollywood A-lister Zac Efron has joined co-star John Cena on the set of his new blockbuster, filming today at Avalon Airport. But the contrast between the two actors couldn't be more stark.
Hiding behind a wall of security and umbrellas, megastar Zac Efron made it clear he did not want to be seen on set today at Avalon Airport. His co-star John Cena couldn't be more different.
Everybody on the cast is great. Working with somebody like Zac Efron, especially on a Peter Farrelly movie, that's a real pleasure for me.
300 local extras, all dressed in their best holiday attire, were given a chance to star alongside the Hollywood heartthrobs.
Creating each scene is a long and arduous process. Today, the cast and crew filmed for 10 hours for just a 2-minute sequence.
They all take forever. It's a tough business.
But the casting did save him money on security, John Cena having a quiet word to a cheeky paparazzo who tried to sneak onto the set.
Just a perspective. That's all right. We're making more news.
Beth Yeoman, 7 News.
The size of Melbourne's blocks of land are shrinking, but the price is still going up. Next, where you'll pay $14,000 a square metre and where you'll pay $400. Also coming up, why mushrooms could be the key to a better memory, and why Prince Harry's first lover was shocked by his book. To breaking news now, and 2 primary school-aged children have suffered serious injuries after being hit by a car at Wyndham Vale late this afternoon. One child who suffered head injuries has been airlifted to hospital, the other transported by road. The female driver who wasn't injured is speaking with police. Melbourne's real estate market has been hit by shrinkflation, with the average residential block 10% smaller than it was a decade ago. But new data on the cost of land per square metre has revealed a surprising suburb rich list.
Albert Park, just south of the CBD, where 1 square metre of land will set you back an average of just under $14,000, the most expensive in Melbourne.
When you have a look at house prices in Melbourne, they've risen about 90% over the last decade. Price per square metre, however, has soared by 110%.
Middle Park, East Melbourne, St Kilda West and Fitzroy round out the top 5, but our most exclusive suburbs, Toorak and Brighton, aren't in the top 10.
This is the influence of block size, and some of the areas that are coming up with the highest price per square metre are actually the smallest medium block size suburbs across Melbourne.
Melbourne's average block size is shrinking, now 574 square metres, down 9% in the past decade.
Particularly as our population pressure puts demand on land, we see it escalate over time, and it's actually the asset that sits on the land that depreciates.
The bargains are further out. You can get land at Devon Meadows, North Warrandyte and Beaconsfield Upper for under $400 per square metre, while Yarrambat, 30 kilometres northeast of the CBD, is cheaper still at just $274 per square metre.
Some people are willing to make that compromise on the space that they have and purchase in a much higher priced suburb but get a smaller block.
Matt Thompson, 7 News.
No good news here either, I'm afraid, with the Reserve Bank upping its inflation forecast, signalling there's more interest rate hikes on the horizon. Finance editor Gemma Acton joins us now. And Gemma, it wasn't the best end to the week for investors.
Yes, Peter, Aussie shares dropped again today, knocking the ASX 200 back down to a 3-week low. Traders were spooked by the Reserve Bank upping its inflation forecast and signalling its work hiking rates is far from over. The Aussie dollar seems to have lost its recent momentum. It's now heading into the weekend shy of 70 US cents. While oil prices are slipping, that's as concerns grow over demand from the US. And a bumper January for the share market has given our super a boost after a disappointing 2022. Median balanced super funds added 3% last month, just behind higher risk growth funds that rose by 3.4%. Peter.
Thanks, Gemma. A British woman says she's shocked Prince Harry detailed their private sexual encounter in his best-selling book. The now 40-year-old is the so-called older woman the Duke of Sussex says he lost his virginity to at 17.
Disbelief he went into so much detail because then it's obvious who it was. So for me, that was like a huge thing because then suddenly I was like, oh no, everyone's going to know.
The former royal horse groomer says the pair was drunk and got lost in the moment. Australian researchers have discovered a unique type of mushroom can boost memory. Research into the lion's mane mushroom opens the door to new treatment options for diseases like Alzheimer's.
The lion's mane mushroom is magic in a different sense, now proven to magnify memory.
We really have a strong effect.
Grown in a lab in Korea, then shipped to the University of Queensland, where researchers extracted a compound from the flesh of the fungus and tested it on mice.
Helped their memory, and they could basically remember better. So we think that this would actually also apply to humans.
It's hoped it could eventually be used to treat and protect against cognitive disorders.
It's very difficult to find molecules that actually get inside the brain, and this one actually does.
A clinical trial involving Alzheimer's patients is currently underway in Korea.
The lion's mane mushroom has a long history of being used medicinally, but isn't just something you can pick up at the local supermarket. It tends to be sold at specialty stores or even online.
The full benefits are still being investigated, but researchers say incorporating them into your diet couldn't hurt. Georgia Holland, 7 News.
Sport is next with Tim Watson. And Tim, Australia's showing some fight in Nagpur.
They are, Mitch, and they've got one man to thank too. Victorian Todd Murphy has dethroned India's king, but there is an injury concern. We'll get the latest next. Plus an exclusive insight into Trent Cotchin's new role as the Bombers give a big hint on Dyson's future. From Carlton one day to Collingwood the next, as Toby Green throws everything into the pre-season. A mum's Christmas gift that kick-started a basketball legend. Welcome back. Victorian debutant Todd Murphy is single-handedly keeping Australia in the first test in India. The 22-year-old took the first 4 wickets with the hosts 5 for 189, 12 runs ahead, while there's a fresh injury concern, though, for Australia.
After a fruitless first hour, Todd Murphy got the breakthrough on day 2. Parents Jamie and Paula celebrated their son's second test wicket. Pat Cummins also up and about. Last night, Ravi Jadeja was cleared by the match referee after he was spotted applying a substance to his spinning finger. India say it was pain relief cream. It looked to do the trick. The 34-year-old took 5 for 47. Nat Unides, 7 News.
Will Sutherland's captaincy debut has started strongly. Victoria bowled Queensland out for 175. Sutherland claimed 4 wickets as the Vics took a 132-run first innings lead. At stumps on day 2, they lead by 153 runs. Heading into his 16th and possibly his last AFL season, Trent Cotchin has revealed the selfless motivating factor driving Richmond's ageing stars. In an exclusive interview with 7 News, the veteran Tiger also discussed his surprising on-field switch.
Coming to TV screens this season, Trent Cotchin up forward. Jack Riewoldt flagged it, calling Cotchin Trent Coleman.
That's just Jack taking the piss, but yeah, really enjoying, a different look at it. There's different opportunities within our team, and I think you need to adapt and evolve across your journey. And clearly, I've played midfield for a long period of my career, but really excited about new opportunities.
There's real expectation Jacob Hopper and Tim Taranto could make Richmond major premiership contenders. Their addition providing motivation after 3 flags in 4 years.
I really want to do that for the guys that have put the trust in coming to our club. And I think back to 2019 when Lynchy came across, and that was a pretty big thing.
There's massive raps on Dustin Martin's pre-season, but the superstar avoided the cameras on their Apollo Bay camp. Cotchin dispelling persistent rumours, Martin didn't go.
Yeah, he was. He was in my cabin, so he definitely was on camp.
And in a twist, Collingwood's given Oleg Markov a lifeline. Markov trained with Carlton yesterday, but Collingwood created an 11th hour list spot. The Blues hadn't officially committed, the Pies sneaking under their guard. Craig McRae and Justin Lepich, big fans from when both coaches were at Richmond. And bound by strict confidentiality, Chris Fagan says he will address the Hawthorn racism investigation when he can.
It's obviously going a little bit slower than everybody expected, but that's just the way it goes. It's not something that I can control. Any help with legal fees would be appreciated.
Tom Brown, 7 News.
Essendon has given its strongest hint yet towards its captaincy decision. Dyson Heppel may remain in the role as skipper under new coach Brad Scott.
We've said all along that Dyson Heppel is our captain, and that will remain up until we go through our process. And I suspect that there's a strong likelihood that that'll still be the case. He's been super impressive, and if he wants to continue as captain, then I suspect that's what will happen.
Jake Stringer and Peter Wright both trained today after being restricted with injury in recent weeks. In Sydney, Toby Green copped some friendly fire during the Giants practice match but returned to finish training. The best sprinter in the world, Nature Strip, took to Flemington for a jump out this morning ahead of next Saturday's Group 1 Black Caviar Lightning Stakes.
I think Nature Strip will be in front at some stage, and I think we'll go away smiling.
I am thunderstruck, and Mr. Brightside headline tomorrow's Group 1 CF Ore Stakes, which is live and free on 7 from midday. And the celebrations continue for LeBron James after breaking the NBA's all-time scoring record. LeBron revealed a Christmas gift from his mum was the catalyst to one of basketball's greatest careers.
When I was 3 years old, on December 25th, 1988, my mother bought me a little Tykes hoop. That moment, I fell in love with basketball. Mom, thank you. Thank you so much.
LeBron was sidelined with an ankle injury as the Lakers went down to the Bucks. Mitch, where would we be without our mums?
Yes, a nice touch indeed. Thank you, Tim. Jane Bunn is next with the forecast at the launch of the Melbourne Fashion Festival. And Jane, it looks like a glorious evening in Melbourne.
Oh, Mitch, we are warm and sunny watching the fashion here at Government House. Now, temperatures rise tomorrow. The full details are next. Welcome back to Government House, where the Melbourne Fashion Festival is being launched this evening. This is Australia's largest consumer fashion event, as you can shop the runway direct to your bag. With over 100 events, there's definitely something for everyone. It'll be held in Melbourne over 9 days early in March. Now, this afternoon, the sun was shining and it's warm and humid. The city began on 16, and as it can't fall much further with such high humidity in the air. The light winds and humid air created pockets of fog that lasted well into the morning. Then there was lots of sunshine and the city was absolutely lovely. We reached 25. As we usually see in a light southerly wind, temperatures are higher away from the bay. Most suburbs reached the high 20s and it crept into the low 30s in the outer east. Victoria has seen patches of fog and some patchy mid-level cloud. Then thunderstorms developed up on the eastern ranges, producing large hail and damaging winds up there. Other than that, it is sunny. Temperatures have climbed to 40 in the Mallee, 42.5 in Mildura. That is ahead of a weak cool change in the far west of the state this evening. The cyclones continue to move away from the mainland. We are warm to hot here in Victoria thanks to a high that is now over New Zealand. But the heat won't last long as a trough passing through brings a cool change. So yes, we are mild again by Sunday. We've got cloudy skies with a bit of drizzle out there too. But then, once those cyclones move away, we'll enter a dry period. Now this time, it's not just for Victoria, as it has been for quite a while, but dry for much of the country. The desert will no longer be covered in cloud. Instead, it can bake in the sun. And that heat is then pushed to Victoria late next week. It could be our first big and prolonged heat wave. This is what it could look like this time next week. Around the nation tomorrow, Brisbane and Sydney are hot and sunny, no effects from the cyclone. Adelaide is on the mild side of the trough. Perth heats up again over the weekend. In Victoria, morning fog patches on another humid day. It is warm to hot, ahead of milder winds once that trough moves through, and that brings foggy low cloud and a touch of drizzle. Closer in, it is hot, but not all day. Maximum temperatures depend on when the cool change arrives. Now it's due in lunchtime around Geelong, so reaching the high 20s. Early afternoon in the city, reaching the low 30s. But not until late afternoon in northeastern suburbs, so it reaches the mid-30s there. I'm expecting the city to climb to about 32 before a cool change early afternoon. Now, the temperature doesn't plummet. Expect a nice and pleasant cool down. Still up near 30 at 3 p.m. and low 20s around 6. To the 8-day outlook, from Sunday to Tuesday morning, we have our next period of grey skies with drizzly light rain at times. So Sunday's 20 and Monday, yes, a top of just 19. Now that lingers into Tuesday morning, then the sun returns. It should rise to about 22. After that is our next heat wave. Wednesday 28, I'm expecting 34 Thursday, 37 Friday, and the cool change in southern Victoria around Saturday. But hot tomorrow, about 32 before an afternoon cool change, then grey and drizzly on Sunday, and a top of just 20. So a big change this weekend, Mitch.
It's a beautiful evening there, Jane. Enjoy it at Government House. Thank you. And that's the way it is this Friday, the 10th of February. Thanks for your company. For now, from the 7 News team, good night.